We're going to adjust the valves on my Ford 2600 tractor. So if you recall, I got this tractor for free and needed quite a bit of work, and it had one stuck valve, and so I adjusted that. Well, I got that valve unstuck, but I loosened off on the adjustment and just kind of guessed, and I wanted to run it and let it kind of seat in there, and then before I adjusted it. So we're at that point now where we need to circle back, adjust the valves on it. They're noisy, so this should be a similar process on like a 2000, 3000 and some others. The only difference really being in the probably the air filter setup and stuff like that. A few little differences. But anyway, we got the battery tray slid out of the way. We've got our hood off. I didn't even have the hood bolted on, but you're gonna have a series, if you have to unbolt it, you're gonna have a series of bolts. I think there's 4 bolts that hold this thing on, hold the hood on. I think that's all. 2 down here and 2 up here. And on a 2600, you're gonna have to take the cover off the air filter housing, which I've done, and we're gonna unbolt the air filter housing. And if I remember right, did I replace this? No, I replaced that. I think we can leave, we'll try to see if we can leave this pipe in place and shove this hose back. We're gonna take these 2 bolts out to get this housing out. It slips in a slot down here at the bottom. And then we're gonna have to undo this clamp right here. And I had issues when I first took this thing apart getting this out or getting this off. I ended up cutting this hose was just stuck and rock hard. So this is a new one. What I'm going to try to do is lubricate, spray some stuff on here and slide this hose this way before we undo any of that. I had issues. You could take this tube off if you wanted to. I had issues getting one of the bolts out in the fan shroud, and I didn't want to mess it up, so I left it alone. But you could do that if it's easy on yours. And then once all that's out of the way, you'll have good access to get the valve cover off. There's just no way on a 2600 to get it off with this air filter housing in the way. Like I said, if you've got a 2000 may still be an oil bath air cleaner, so you may have room in here to work. And I've got wasp flying around me, so somewhere on this tractor there's a wasp nest. I'm sure we will find that at some point, and they will get us. So I'm gonna take a minute to see if I can find that before they find us. And yeah, I think that will get us started. Yeah, so I'll set up some time lapse and we will start tearing this thing down, the things I told you. And once we get to the point of once we get the valve cover off, we'll go in depth on setting the valves. I do have a service manual for these tractors. I don't remember if it has a 2600, but I know it has a 2000, 3000, all those, and should be the same. I need to look and see if we set before I tear this down. Well, I guess we can start it up with the air cleaner housing off of it. But before I pull the valve cover off, I'm gonna look and see if these need to be set warm or cold. I did have the engine running earlier. By the time we get it cooled, or by the time we get it torn down, it's gonna be cooled off. So I just need to know if I need to start it back up and get it warm again or whatever. So I'm gonna go pull the service manual out, take a look at it. We'll look at all of our settings on, yeah, you know, what they need to be adjusted to and all that kind of stuff. We'll get all that. If you want some really good access you could pull this shroud off. I think we're gonna maybe try to leave it in place, but if it gets to be in the way, we can pull that off as well. 2 bolts here, and then where is it? 1 bolt right there, I think. So pretty easy to get off if we decide to do that. Actually, it may be a good idea, so we may do that. That seems like a good plan, to go ahead and just take that thing off. I think it's going to be in the way. Well, I found them, and before they find us, take care of them. All right, now let's get busy. All right, I got my service manual out, and this is for a 2000, 3000 series or whatever, but it's the same engine as the 2600, and there may be even a supplemental in here to add on the 2600. I don't know, but anyway, it looks like for exhaust we should be 17 to 19 thousandths, and intake 14 to 16. And it looks like all it really tells you is do not make valve adjustments when the engine is operating at above normal operating temperature. It doesn't tell you whether it should be cold or hot, but just not overheating. So I don't know. I think we'll just probably set it right in the middle and we should be good. Firing order 1, 2, 3. That's easy to remember. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to adjust these by firing order. So what we will do is I'm going to pop the cap off, and basically when we're going to have to identify which one is 1, and when the rotor's pointing about where number 1 is, we should be able to adjust number 1. Pointing at 2, adjust number 2, because when the valves will be closed when we're firing. So that's the thought behind that. So let me pop that cap off, kind of remember where our different spots are, and do we have a mark on the cap for number 1? Number 1 is this one right here. So this is number 1. So we will rotate the engine around. I'm just going to grab the fan and rotate it that way. But I mean, if you want to, you could put a little mark somewhere on the distributor so you can easily tell. But I think we'll be able to determine. So we're going to pop this off and get that cap off. And then I'll show you when we get it lined up with number 1, and then we'll rotate around for number 2, and then number 3. Oh, cap even is marked number 1. Not sure how well you can see this on camera, but you can see the little marker right there, mark right there, and then there's one in the back. What I did is I put the cap on, and then I just put my screwdriver on the distributor. Just like put the screwdriver on the distributor where that spot, where that, number 1 was on the cap. Pull the cap off and then mark this where my screwdriver is. Came over here, did the same thing, and then kind of came in from the back side over here and just did all that. And now I've got 3 marks for 1, 2, and 3, so I can easily line up my rotor to where the spot is on the cap. Now, I know there's adjustment here, but we should be able to get it close enough that we can adjust the valves by doing this. So, and then I'm just grabbing the fan blade and just rotating the engine with the fan. You can hold the belt and put tension on the belt if you need to, or go ahead and pull the plugs out if you have to. But that's the route I'm going, and it seems to be working. So we're gonna line up number 1. We're almost there, and then we'll adjust it. We're lined up, and as you can see, these are down, but these are loose. So I'm gonna go get my feeler gauge, and let's see, we need to figure this out. We've got intake, exhaust. Let's see, that's definitely an intake, exhaust. Yeah, exhaust, intake, exhaust, intake, exhaust, intake, exhaust. You can see the bump. Exhaust, exhaust, exhaust. So we're gonna go through, adjust these two. I think this is the one, it's one of these two. It's the stuck one. So, and the adjustments here, they're kind of like lock nuts. Super easy. There's no, they just lock. I don't know what else to say. So we're just gonna tighten these down or loosen them depending on what we need to do, but I think they're gonna be loose. So got my feeler gauge. We're gonna do 15 on the 15 on intake and 18 on exhaust. That puts us right in the middle. Double check that real quick. Yeah. So 15 on intake, 18 on exhaust. I've got my feeler gauge here. I've got this bent set. To be honest, I don't even know if it came bent or if somebody bent it. I guess it came bent. But it works great for these. Just easier to get in. So I've got 15 thousandths and 18 thousandths ready to go. So 15, to be honest. I mean, we could tighten it up just a hair. These 1/2 inch, 7/16, 7/16. So let's just back them off, or tighten it up just a hair. Too tight. There we go. Let's say that's good for the intake. Let's check the exhaust. Ooh, super loose on the exhaust. That one may have been the one that was stuck. But that's good to know that, you know, it wasn't far off. So we're gonna need to tighten this down. Man, these things they are hard to turn, I will tell you that. But they're like a lock. Man, that doesn't feel right. Let's back off on it first. Okay. Yeah, feels better now. Alright, where's our 18? Got it too tight. Back off just a hair. It's a little bit loose. That's a good 18 right there. All right, so I'll set up some time lapse maybe, and y'all can watch me do that. It's pretty simple job. I mean, the setting on them is loose. They're probably always going to clatter, but you know, they're set to spec, and this exhaust was definitely out of spec. And I just don't recall if that's the one that was stuck. Probably was. You can go back and watch the video if you want. But one of these on number 1, pretty sure it was number 1, was stuck. And I left it, knowingly I left it loose, because I had to loosen off on the adjuster to get the push rod back on. And then I just tightened it back up loose, because I wasn't sure, you know, that valve had been stuck open. I wasn't sure if rust or something had built around, or carbon had built around the seat, and the last thing I wanted it to do is me to adjust it at that point with it actually not fully being closed, and then after it run, fully closed, and then be tight. So we left it loose. Like I said, I'm going to run through and rotate the engine around. I'll set up time lapse, y'all can watch that, but it's going to be the same process. We'll rotate till the distributor points to the spot for that cylinder, for that next cylinder, and you can tell, like, you know, I've got marks on the cap, the 3 marks. Even if you didn't know the firing order, as long as you knew where those marks were and you rotated it to one of those marks, like on this engine, you could tell which one, you know, based on what the valve's not being pushed down. So we moved it to number 1. We can see, but if we didn't know that was number 1, we moved it to, I'm rambling. We moved it to a firing spot on the cap, and one cylinder is going to have the valves closed on this engine, and it's number 1. You can see 2 and 3 are not closed, so 1 is the one we adjust. All right. Time lapse. We're done. It's all back together. Forgot which way the distributor rotates on these, so I did bump the engine over just to make sure I had my firing order correct. It's 1, 2, 3, not 1, 2, 3. Wasn't sure which way it rotated, so just bumped the starter. I saw it turning this way, so we go 1, 2, 3. Yeah, double checked again. Anyway, y'all heard what it sounded like before, so we're gonna start it up now. We'll see if the valves sound any quieter, and hopefully they do. They were kind of noisy before, but they're probably gonna be noisy anyway. I mean, these are not meant to be quiet engines, and they're probably set from the, you know, that factory spec is probably a little on the sloppy side, a noisy side, but yeah. Anyway, let's crank it up, see what it sounds like, and yeah, then I guess we're done with this tractor other than cleaning it up. Let me leave the battery swung out there. It's not gonna hurt anything. Turn key on. Get our camera and can off before we lose them. It sounded much quieter. So these are pretty noisy, but you hear a little bit of tapping. Ignore that, whatever that noise is, but you hear a little bit of tapping under the valve cover, but not like it was before. All right, that's it. Pretty simple job. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment down below, hit the like button, and subscribe for more.